Hi, this is Tony Devine at the Grey Matters Network. I am managing partner here and have been for the last 6 years. I'm joined today by David McKiernan, who is one of our experts in the area of coaching and mentoring. David's particular background is in financial services, where he's spent a long and successful career with a variety of multinational firms. David is going to talk to us today, as I said, about strategic business planning. David, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Hi, Tony. Hi, everybody. Yeah, my name is David McKiernan. As Tony says, I've had a long career in financial services. Within that, I've done what you'd expect bankers to do, corporate lending to small business, micro business, but also I have spent considerable time in managing a strategic business unit within the larger organization, and also quite a number of years in looking after the strategic planning area for the multinational bank's Irish interests here. And in more recent years, I have delivered training on this particular area for small business, and also mentored many small businesses.
Very good. So you've obviously pivoted your career more towards coaching and mentoring, David, and your area of interest is strategic business planning, among others. But today you're going to talk to us about what this is all about. So could you explain briefly what is strategic business planning?
Well, I think the best way of describing it, Tony, is it's about determining the objectives for the business and how to achieve them. And that's really the end-to-end process. It's a longer term perspective for the business, keeping the business on a trend line towards those objectives, which means that it has an effect of governing shorter term decisions as well, to ensure that trend line is maintained. So it's good for governance. It's good as a control for management. In my view, it helps to avoid businesses making conflicting decisions on an operational basis, a week-to-week, month-to-month basis, because it's a baseline. And very importantly, which is a critical point for many small businesses, it creates an awareness of the funding needs of the business. What is the appropriate funding needs aligned to the ambitions for the business?
Very good. So, you've spent most of your career in the corporate space. Obviously, a lot of the people you're talking to these days in your mentoring capacity are smaller businesses. So why strategic business planning for a small business? Why should they embark on it?
Well, Tony, I think you've touched on it. One point would be, we're all aware of the major corporations that we deal with in our everyday lives. They generally report on a quarterly basis, and the analysts take great attention and pay great attention to not just the results, but how consistent the performance has been with the strategic business plan that the corporation has announced. So it's incredibly important to them. And the question has to be asked, well, if it's that important for large scale business, why wouldn't it be important for a small business? But leaving that aside, if you look at ourselves as individuals, we plan all the time in our lives. Do we want a property before we have the kids? When do we need to change the car? Are we going to change the house? Are we going to go on holidays? Where are we going to go on holidays? And whilst we mightn't document it, we do set objectives, and we do set out how we're going to achieve those objectives and what are the actions to be focused on. So I suppose for a business, it takes the ad hoc element out of managing the business, which can only be a good thing. It acts as a reference point. It helps ensure correct funding structures, that funding structures now and going forward over the plan period match the business's ambitions. So it's incredibly important from that point of view for a small business, in my view.
Very good. So will having a business plan guarantee outcomes, David?
Tony, you know as well as anybody, all of us, none of us have guaranteed outcomes. But I do think that it certainly enhances the prospect of a business achieving the ambitions for that business by the owners over a period of time, because it influences the longer term decisions. It influences what has to happen to the functional areas of the business to support that plan. But importantly, it also influences shorter term decisions to try and make the routine shorter term decisions consistent with the longer term ambitions. But business, as we all know, it's in a precarious area. almost nothing happens as expected. There are external threats and influences. And in my view, having a business plan actually helps businesses deal with the unexpected because it acts as a reference point. It's easier for a business owner to have some appreciation as to what has happened to the performance of the business relative to where they thought it would be.
Very good. So you imply that it's a process. Could you talk to us a bit about what the process is?
Yeah, well, from my mind, if you're going to embark on a strategic business plan and you think it's sensible for your business, the process is absolutely critical. And the process is everything. And being loyal and disciplined to the conduct of the process, but also the plan afterwards is equally critical. So the process has elements to it: objectives, strategy, actions, and these terms are often used in an interchangeable way by many people. To my mind, they are part of the arms of the same body, but not the same thing. And I think it's incredibly important in the process to understand the distinct elements of the business plan relative to those areas that has to be addressed. And the first being the objectives. The first thing is to determine as tightly as possible and define the objectives and the hierarchy of objectives for the period of the plan. Those objectives will give rise to strategies. Strategies being, what does the business need to do across its functional areas in order to deliver those objectives? And for the strategy to deliver, it requires the boring, hard-working piece, which is actions. The what needs to be done, who has to do it, and when do they have to do it? And they're three chronological pieces of the business plan that is critically important. And that's the process. And then when you have a business plan, you've got to have a discipline and a loyalty to it, because there's no point in having a business plan and then in the next 6 months making routine operation decisions that are completely inconsistent with the plan. It has no chance of meeting the trend line then.
Very good. So you mentioned the word discipline there, David. Can you expand a bit on what you mean by that in the context of a business plan?
Yeah, well, it's the discipline is being absolutely focused and clear in relation to what the objectives are. That's the first thing, because if they're wrong, then you know the watershed of all the other elements is going to be out of sync. The second aspect is what I alluded to, and that is that the business plan is, as I said earlier, a longer term perspective. But that longer term perspective should be influencing and have an impact on shorter term, what's in the in-basket decisions. So the business owner, business person, business management team should be aware and pay attention to shorter term decisions. That are they consistent with our longer term business plan, or are they not? And if they're not, why not? So that's where I think discipline is really important, both in the making of the plan and in the managing of it thereafter. And most important of all, in terms of reviewing it. Very
good. So that's been very informative, very insightful, and very helpful for all of us to listen to your experience in this respect, David. My takeaways, what I'm picking up on, is a business plan provides you with a baseline or a reference point. It addresses the question of predictability. And laterally, you've talked there about it generates a discipline. What would the key messages be that you want to, and if you want to stick to 3 bullets, David?
Well, I think you've touched on them, Tony. I probably just use different words. The first would be having a plan with the discipline I've spoken about. That, to my mind, leads to good governance for the business, both in the immediate and in the longer term path and ambitions for the business. The second thing is the importance of focusing on defining the objectives very tightly and be very clear about it. And also, if there's a hierarchy of objectives, recognizing that. And the last bit is the discipline, the what, the who, and the when, and having the discipline and taking the space out of the operational day to deliver on those, which is effectively what delivers the plan.
Very good, very good. That was fantastic, David. Really appreciate your time today. Thank you all for listening. If you wish and would like to get access to people like David McKiernan and colleagues across the Grey Matters Network, please do contact us here at thegreymattersnetwork.com. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Tony.